She woke up at 4 a.m. for 31 days straight. She meal prepped every Sunday. She downloaded the app. She bought the journal with the motivational quote on the cover. She told her sister, her coworker, her gym partner, and 3 people on the internet about her new commitment to discipline. Day 32, she slept until 9. Not because something went wrong. Because nothing went wrong. The motivation just stopped. And when the motivation stopped, she discovered something that nobody in the productivity space, the self-help world, or the inspirational corner of the internet had ever told her directly. Motivation was never discipline. She had been chasing a feeling and calling it a system. And when the feeling left, the system had nothing underneath it. Her name is Claire, and she is not unusual. Claire is the rule, not the exception. Because almost everyone who decides to become more disciplined makes the same foundational error. They treat discipline as something you feel. They wait to feel ready, to feel motivated, to feel like the kind of person who does hard things. And discipline has nothing to do with feeling. Nothing at all. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius knew this better than almost anyone who has ever lived, because he was the most powerful man in the ancient world, and he had every reason to stop doing hard things. He could have rested, he could have delegated everything, he could have eaten whatever he wanted, slept as late as he liked, avoided every uncomfortable conversation, and surrounded himself entirely with people who told him what he wanted to hear. He chose not to. Every single day he chose not to. And he wrote about that choice in his private journals with an honesty that is still shocking to read 2,000 years later. He wrote about how difficult it was. How often he did not want to get up. How often the comfortable option was right there, and he had to choose against it. He was not naturally disciplined in the way people imagine great Stoics to be. He was a man who built discipline through practice, through philosophy, through the daily, unglamorous work of choosing the hard thing when the easy thing was available. And what he discovered in that process are things that almost no one is telling you. Not the version that sells. The version that is actually true. Truth 1. Discipline is not about willpower, it is about identity. In 1954, a young man named Roger stood on an athletic track in Oxford, England. He had been told by every credible expert in the world of competitive running that what he was about to attempt was physically impossible. The human body, the experts said, could not run a mile in under 4 minutes. The bone structure, the lung capacity, the cardiovascular system, the basic physiology of the human animal simply did not permit it. It had been tried for decades by the best runners on earth. None had done it. The 4-minute mile was considered a hard biological ceiling, not a record waiting to be broken. Roger Bannister was not a full-time athlete. He was a medical student. He trained in 30-minute sessions because his medical studies left him no more time than that. He did not have the resources of a national program, the coaching staff of a professional team, or the training hours of the athletes who had attempted this barrier before him. What he had was something different. He had decided he was the kind of person who would break it. Not that he wanted to break it. Not that he was going to try to break it. That he was the kind of person for whom breaking it was simply the next expression of who he already was. On May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister ran the mile in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. 46 days later, an Australian runner named John Landy broke Bannister's record. Within 3 years, 16 other runners had broken the 4-minute barrier. The barrier that no human body could cross was crossed by 17 people in 3 years, the moment one person demonstrated that the identity of someone who crossed it was available. The experts were wrong about the physiology. But they were also wrong about something deeper. The barrier was never primarily physical. It was a story about what kind of person could exist. And the moment Bannister decided he was that kind of person, the barrier became permeable. The Stoics understood this at a level most modern discussions of discipline completely miss. Epictetus did not teach discipline as a set of behaviors. He taught it as a declaration of identity. He asked his students not what do you want to do, but who do you intend to be? Because the person who is trying to be disciplined is fighting themselves every single day. They are the person who wants to stay in bed arguing with the part of them that believes they should get up. The person who is disciplined does not have that argument. Because the argument is already settled at the level of identity. They are the kind of person who gets up. Not because they feel like it. Because that is who they are. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in one of the most direct passages in the Meditations. When you wake up in the morning, he wrote, tell yourself what kind of day you are going to live. Not what you hope will happen, not what you want to feel. What kind of person you are going to be. That declaration made before the resistance arrives, before the comfort beckons, before the feeling of motivation has been tested and found absent, is the actual foundation of discipline. Claire ran for 31 days on motivation. If she had been running on identity, she would still be running. Truth 2. The enemy of discipline is comfort, not laziness. There was a Roman senator in the 1st century named Publius Petronius Arbiter who historians believe wrote one of the most unusual novels to survive from antiquity. But Petronius is not remembered for his writing. He is remembered for how he lived. He was a man of extraordinary refinement and sophistication. He surrounded himself with beauty and comfort and pleasure of every kind. He was famous throughout Rome for never doing anything that felt unpleasant. He ate only what was delicious, he wore only what was exquisite, he attended only the events that were interesting, he maintained only the relationships that were entertaining. He was comfortable. And he produced almost nothing of lasting consequence. He drifted through one of the most intellectually fertile periods in Roman history, contributing nothing durable because comfort had robbed him of the edge that produces real work. Seneca, who knew men like Petronius well, wrote about this pattern with the kind of controlled fury that makes his letters still feel urgent 2,000 years later. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, he wrote, it is the man who craves more. And the craving he was most concerned with was not the craving for money or status or recognition. It was the craving for comfort. Because comfort, unlike money or status, does not announce its damage. It arrives gently, it feels like a reward, it presents itself as the natural destination of all the effort you have been putting in. And then quietly, slowly, without any single dramatic moment of failure, it removes your capacity for the difficult thing. Not all at once. A little at a time. The cold shower you skip once becomes the cold shower you never take again. The hard conversation you postpone once becomes the hard conversation that never happens. The early morning you trade for 30 more minutes in bed becomes the morning you no longer wake up early. Comfort compounds. The more you have of it, the more you need of it, and the less capable you become of functioning without it. This is the brutal truth about discipline that nobody wants to say directly. The enemy is not your laziness. Lazy people are actually easier to work with philosophically because they know what they are. The enemy is your comfort. The legitimate, hard-earned, reasonable comfort that you have decided you deserve. Because that comfort is not neutral. It is active. It is eroding you right now, even as you feel like you are simply resting. Marcus Aurelius had a practice the Stoics called ascesis. Voluntary hardship. He would deliberately choose the uncomfortable option when the comfortable option was available. Not as punishment. Not as performance. As training. He slept on a hard surface when a soft one was available. He ate plainly when richness was on offer. He chose the cold when warmth was waiting. Not because cold surfaces and plain food and cold air are virtuous in themselves, but because the repeated choice of discomfort keeps something alive in a person that comfort slowly kills. The knowledge that you can. The lived experience of choosing hard when easy was right there. And having survived it. And having found it survivable. That knowledge is the actual foundation of discipline. Not the feeling of motivation. The knowledge built through repetition that you are the kind of person who chooses hard. Petronius never built that knowledge. He chose comfort every time. And when the moment arrived that required something more, he had nothing to draw on. Truth 3. Discipline requires a philosophy, not a schedule. In 1847, a woman named Harriet was standing in a field in Maryland. She was enslaved. She had been for her entire life. And she had decided that she was going to walk to freedom. Not because a plan had fallen into place. Not because the conditions were finally right. Not because she had a guaranteed route, a guaranteed guide, a guaranteed outcome. She had none of those things. What she had was something that no external circumstance could give her or take from her. A philosophy. A set of beliefs so deep and so settled that they had become indistinguishable from who she was. She believed that freedom was her right, not her hope. She believed that she was responsible for claiming it, not waiting for someone to grant it. She believed that the risk of trying and dying was preferable to the certainty of remaining. And she believed that once you had decided to go, you went all the way. You did not turn back when it became frightening. You did not recalibrate when the route became uncertain. You did not negotiate with the part of yourself that wanted to return to what was familiar because familiar was at least survivable. You went. Harriet Tubman walked approximately 90 miles to Philadelphia. She returned to the South 13 times. She freed over 70 people. And she never lost a single one. Not because she had a perfect plan. Because she had a philosophy that was unbreakable. This is what most modern discussions of discipline completely miss. They give you schedules, they give you systems, they give you habit trackers and accountability partners and morning routines, and the perfect sequence of behaviors optimized for maximum output. And all of those things can be useful. But none of them can substitute for what Harriet had. A philosophy. A set of answers to the questions that only arise when the system fails, when the schedule collapses, when the accountability partner is unavailable, when the morning routine is impossible because life has intervened with something the routine did not account for. The questions that only arise in the real moment of difficulty. Why am I doing this? What do I actually believe about who I am? What matters enough to me that I will continue when continuing is genuinely hard? Without answers to those questions, discipline is a schedule. And schedules break. With answers to those questions, discipline is a way of being. And a way of being does not break because the calendar changed. Marcus Aurelius built his entire practice of discipline on philosophy, not schedule. Every morning he returned not to his to-do list but to his values. What do I believe about the good life? What do I believe about my responsibility to the people I serve? What do I believe about how a person of character behaves when the situation is difficult? Those beliefs were the engine. The schedule, the habits, the behaviors were just the expression of the engine. Remove the engine and the behaviors collapse. This is why Claire lost her discipline on day 32. She had built an extraordinary schedule. She had built no philosophy. When the feeling left, she had nothing underneath it. Because she had never answered the harder questions. Not what am I going to do? But why does it matter enough to do when I do not feel like it? Truth 4. Consistency beats intensity every single time. In 1519, a man named Hernando left Cuba with 11 ships, 500 soldiers, and a plan that most of his contemporaries considered insane. He was heading to the coast of what is now Mexico. His goal was the conquest of an empire. He was outnumbered by odds that are genuinely difficult to comprehend. The Aztec Empire at its height had a population of millions. Hernando Cortés had 500 men. Every military strategist of his era would have told him the mission was impossible. But Cortés did something that was not about a single dramatic battle or a burst of extraordinary effort. He moved consistently. Day after day, week after week, month after month. He built alliances, he learned the political landscape, he moved forward, never retreating, never pausing long enough for the momentum to die, never waiting for conditions that were perfect. He was never the most powerful force on any single day. But he was more consistent than anyone who opposed him. And over time, consistency did what it always does. It compounded. Each day of movement built on the last until the accumulated weight of consistent forward motion became something that no single superior force could stop. Now the historical and moral dimensions of what Cortés did are complicated, and the harm he caused was real and enormous. But the principle his campaign demonstrated is pure and undeniable. Consistency compounds in a way that intensity never can. Most people approach discipline the opposite way. They go hard for a week, they sprint, they do everything, they are maximum effort, maximum commitment, maximum output. And then they crash. And in the crash, they lose not just the momentum of the sprint. They lose ground. Because recovery from a sprint requires rest, and in the rest the habits begin to dissolve, the identity begins to soften, the distance between who they were being and who they normally are begins to close. And they have to sprint again to get back to where they were. Sprint, crash, recover, sprint, crash, recover. That is not discipline. That is intensity cycling. Discipline is the person who does the thing every single day at a level that is sustainable. Not the maximum possible level. The sustainable level. The level that can be repeated tomorrow and the day after and the day after that without requiring a recovery period that undoes the work. Marcus Aurelius did not have dramatic days of extraordinary discipline followed by collapse. He had the same practice every day. The same morning reflection, the same questions, the same commitment. Not exciting, not dramatic, not the kind of thing that makes for an inspirational montage. Just present, consistent, reliable, repeated. Epictetus said it this way. First say to yourself what you would be and then do what you have to do. Not what you are capable of on your best day. What you will do every day. Because what you will do every day is the actual measure of who you are. Not the person you are during the sprint. The person you are on day 247 when nothing is new and nothing is exciting and the work is just the work and you do it anyway. That person is the disciplined person. Claire could have run every third day for 3 years at a pace that did not require heroism. Instead, she ran every day at a pace that required motivation. And motivation ran out. Truth 5. Discipline means mastering your thoughts before your actions. There was a prisoner of war held in North Vietnam for over 7 years. He was a naval aviator named James who was shot down over Hanoi in 1965 and spent the years that followed in conditions of extraordinary deprivation and brutality. He was tortured repeatedly. He was kept in isolation. He had no books, no contact with the outside world, no way to measure time accurately, and no certainty that he would survive. And in those conditions, James Stockdale did something that saved not just his own life but the psychological survival of many of the prisoners around him. He built an interior discipline so powerful that his captors could not reach it. Not by force of will alone, by philosophy. Before his capture, Stockdale had studied Epictetus. He had read the Enchiridion, the small handbook of Stoic practice that Epictetus's students compiled from his teachings. And in the prison camp, in the darkness and the pain, he ran those teachings like software on the hardware of his survival. He separated with absolute precision what was in his control and what was not. His body was not in his control. His captors could do with it what they wished. His sleep, his food, his movement, his communication with the outside world, all of it outside his control. But his judgments, his values, his integrity, the story he told himself about who he was and why, none of that was in their control. And by putting his entire energy into the thing that was in his control and completely releasing the thing that was not, he found something his captors could not take. Peace. Not happiness. Peace. The settled knowledge that whatever they did to him, he remained himself. He returned to the United States in 1973 and went on to become a vice admiral and later a candidate for vice president. He said in interviews afterward that Epictetus had kept him alive. Not metaphorically. Literally. Because the alternative to the Stoic mental discipline he practiced was despair. And despair in that environment killed people. This is the brutal truth about discipline that strikes deepest. Most people think discipline is about controlling behavior. It is not. Behavior is downstream of thought. And thought is downstream of identity and philosophy. The person who has mastered their thoughts does not need to white-knuckle their behavior into compliance. Their behavior simply follows from who they have decided to be and what they have decided to believe. The person who has not mastered their thoughts cannot sustain disciplined behavior regardless of how sophisticated their habit system is. Because the thought always wins eventually. The thought that says this is too hard. The thought that says you deserve a break. The thought that says just this once. The thought that says nothing you do really matters anyway. Those thoughts are not occasional visitors. They are the default programming of the undisciplined mind. And no schedule, no app, no accountability partner can override them. Only a practice of deliberate thought examination and replacement can. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He would examine the thoughts he was carrying into the day. Are these thoughts accurate? Are these thoughts useful? Are these thoughts consistent with who I have decided to be? If not, he replaced them. Not with positive thinking. With accurate thinking. Because positive thinking is just another flavor of delusion. Accurate thinking is the Stoic practice. Looking at the situation as it is without catastrophizing and without minimizing, and asking what is actually true here and what response does truth require. Stockdale in his prison cell could not afford delusion. The men who believed the war would be over by Christmas died. He watched them die. Not from injuries. From the collapse of false hope. The men who survived were the ones who faced the brutal truth of their situation without being destroyed by it. Because they had mastered their thoughts. Not suppressed them. Mastered them. Truth 6. The most disciplined people embrace failure as data. In 1914, the most famous inventor in American history was 67 years old, and he was watching his life's work burn to the ground. Thomas Edison's laboratory and factory complex in West Orange, New Jersey caught fire on a December evening and burned for most of the night. The buildings contained decades of worker-replaceable prototypes, research notes that existed nowhere else, equipment that had taken years to develop and perfect. Edison's son Charles found his father standing outside watching the fire. He expected to find a man who was devastated. Instead, he found Edison with his hands in his pockets watching the flames with what Charles described as genuine fascination. Edison turned to his son and said, "Go get your mother and her friends, they will never see a fire like this again." When Charles asked how he could be so calm, Edison said, "Something wonderful will come from this. I always feel sorry for people who do not read the newspapers because they miss so much of the real story." The next morning, Edison was already drawing plans for what would replace what had burned. He rebuilt within 3 weeks. He was producing again within a month. And he later said of that night that losing the laboratory was the greatest thing that could have happened to him. Because it cleared away everything old. Everything he had been maintaining out of habit rather than necessity. Everything that had been taking up space in his operation that newer, better, more elegant solutions had already made obsolete. The fire had not destroyed his work. It had cleared the ground for the next phase of it. This is not a natural response to catastrophic loss. It is a practiced one. Edison had spent decades training himself to experience failure not as verdict but as information. Not as evidence that something was wrong with him. As data about what the next attempt needed to include or exclude. He had failed thousands of times in the development of the light bulb alone. He had famously said that he had not failed 10,000 times in that process. He had found 10,000 ways that did not work. That reframe is not merely cheerful spin. It is a philosophical stance toward failure that completely changes how failure registers in the nervous system. When failure is verdict, it is unbearable. When failure is data, it is useful. The Stoics had a practice around this that they called amor fati. Love of fate. Not acceptance of fate, not tolerance of fate, not resignation to fate. Love. The active, enthusiastic embrace of everything that happens, including and especially the difficult things, because the difficult things are where the growth is. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this with a clarity that requires no interpretation. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Not what stands in the way will eventually be overcome if you persist. What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle itself is the path. The failure itself is the curriculum. The loss itself contains within it the thing you needed to learn that success would never have taught you. Claire losing her discipline on day 32 was not a failure. It was the data she needed to understand that she had been building on the wrong foundation. The question was never whether she would receive that data. The question was whether she would treat it as verdict or curriculum. Truth 7. Discipline without purpose is just suffering. In 1847, a young woman from Lowell, Massachusetts was working 14-hour days 6 days a week in a textile mill. Her name was Lucy, and she was one of tens of thousands of young women who had come from New England farms to work in the new industrial economy. The work was brutal. The noise was deafening, the air was thick with cotton fibers that damaged lungs, the hours were punishing, the pay was barely sufficient, the conditions would by any modern standard be considered exploitative, and the extreme. Lucy worked with complete discipline. She never missed a shift, she never arrived late, she never complained to the overseers, she produced her quota every single day without fail. And she was miserable. Not because discipline is inherently miserable. but because her discipline was pointed at nothing that belonged to her. She was disciplined in service of someone else's purpose, someone else's profit, someone else's vision of what her life and her labor were for. This is the version of discipline that most of the modern world sells. Show up, work hard, produce, do not complain, be consistent, be reliable. And the implicit promise underneath all of it is that if you are disciplined enough in service of the system will eventually reward you with something that feels like your own life. It usually does not. Because discipline without purpose that is genuinely yours is not discipline. It is compliance. And compliance, however consistent, however externally impressive, however well rewarded, cannot produce the interior life that real discipline is supposed to build. Lucy eventually found her purpose. She became one of the founding organizers of the labor movement in New England. She helped build the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association in 1845 and fought for the 10-hour workday with the same consistency and relentlessness she had previously given to the mill. And she described the difference in her journals with a precision that is remarkable. When I worked for the mill, she wrote, I was disciplined but I was empty. When I worked for ourselves, she wrote, I was disciplined and I was alive. The Stoics made this distinction fundamental to their entire philosophy. They distinguished between preferred indifference, things that are nice to have like wealth, status, comfort, and the actual good which they called virtue. And they argued that discipline aimed only at preferred indifference was ultimately hollow, because it would achieve those things and find that the achievement did not produce what it had promised. Real discipline, the Stoics taught, is always aimed at something that is genuinely yours. Not the career that someone else designed for you. Not the body that the culture decided you should have. Not the wealth that the economic system designated as the measure of your worth. Your purpose. The thing that when you imagine it and work toward it makes the difficulty feel not like suffering but like the price of admission to the life you actually want. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the ancient world, and his discipline was aimed not at maintaining that power but at deserving it. He practiced philosophy not to appear wise but to become wise. He served Rome not because empire was its own reward but because he genuinely believed it was his responsibility to the people in his care. His discipline was grounded in purpose that belonged entirely to him, which is why it held for 20 years in conditions of extraordinary pressure. Discipline without that grounding breaks. Not always immediately, but it always breaks. Because you cannot sustain the sacrifice of the comfortable thing for very long if what you are sacrificing it for does not feel like yours. Truth 8. The final truth: discipline is a love letter to your future self. In 1963, a man named Nelson was convicted in a South African court and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was 45 years old. He was taken to a small cell on Robben Island where he would spend the next 18 years. He was given hard labor quarrying limestone in conditions designed to break him physically and psychologically. And every single day on that island, Nelson Mandela did something that his captors did not understand and therefore did not try to prevent. He studied. He exercised, he organized, he maintained the same routine every day with a consistency that his fellow prisoners later described as almost eerie in its steadiness. He was not doing this because he expected to be free soon. He did not know if he would ever be free. He was doing it because he had made a decision about who he was going to be regardless of what happened to him. And that decision required the daily practice of being that person. Not performing it for an audience. Being it for himself. For the man he intended still to be when the situation changed. And when the situation changed in 1990, when he walked out of Victor Verster prison after 27 years and was met by the entire world's attention, Nelson Mandela did not emerge broken or bitter or diminished. He emerged ready. Because he had spent 27 years staying ready. Not for freedom specifically. For himself. For the full expression of who he had been building himself to be through the daily discipline of study and exercise and maintained dignity and preserved purpose. That is what discipline at its deepest level actually is. It is not the absence of feeling. It is not grinding through misery with clenched teeth. It is not the performance of toughness for an audience that may or may not be watching. It is a love letter to your future self. Every morning that you choose the hard thing over the easy thing, you are writing to the person you will be in 5 years and telling them, I saw you, I believed in you, I prepared for you. Every day that you maintain your practice when no one is watching and nothing external is rewarding you, you are depositing something in an account that your future self will one day draw on. Marcus Aurelius understood this so completely that it permeates every page of the Meditations. He was not writing for an audience. He never intended those journals to be published. He was writing to himself, reminding himself daily who he was, who he intended to be, and what that required of him today. Not someday. Today. The most famous line in the entire work is the simplest. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was not talking about Stoic detachment from the world. He was talking about the power that accumulates over time in the person who every single day takes full responsibility for the only thing that is actually theirs. Their mind, their response, their discipline, their character. That power is not dramatic. It does not trend. It does not get celebrated in the moment it is being built. It is quiet and private and unglamorous, and it compounds over years into something that the world eventually encounters as extraordinary without understanding where it came from. It came from the daily choice. The choice Bannister made every morning at the Oxford track when the 4-minute barrier was still supposedly impossible. The choice Tubman made every time she went back south when she did not have to. The choice Stockdale made in his prison cell when despair was available and philosophy was harder. The choice Mandela made every day on Robben Island when the limestone dust was in his lungs and freedom was a theoretical concept, and the only thing he could control was who he would be in the next hour. The choice Marcus Aurelius made every morning before the empire needed him. That choice is available to you. Right now. Today. Not when you feel like it. Not when the conditions are right. Not when the motivation arrives. Now. Claire woke up on day 33. She did not reach for the journal with the motivational quote on the cover. She did not open the app, she did not check in with her accountability partner, she did not try to resurrect the feeling of motivation that had carried her through the first 31 days. She sat with the question she had never asked. Not what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? She sat with it long enough to answer it honestly. And then she got up. Not because she felt like it. Because she had decided. That decision is not dramatic. It does not photograph well. It does not make for an inspirational story in the moment it happens. But it is the only decision that actually matters. Because motivation is a weather system. It comes and goes based on conditions you do not fully control. Identity is a foundation. It does not move when the weather changes. The brutal truth about discipline is that no one can build it for you. Not a system, not a schedule, not a program, not a person. They can give you tools. But the work is yours. The daily, unglamorous private work of choosing who you are when the comfortable choice is right there. Of maintaining the practice when no one is watching and nothing is rewarding you. Of writing the love letter to your future self one hard morning at a time. Marcus Aurelius did it. Every morning. For 20 years. On the throne of the most powerful empire in the ancient world with every comfort available and every reason to stop. He chose. You can choose too. Not perfectly. Not without failure. Not without the days when you get it completely wrong and have to start again. But consistently. Day after day. In the direction of the person you have decided to be. That is the whole of it. That is all discipline has ever been. The daily choice. Make it. Please subscribe for more. He answered every message the same day it arrived. Every call, every email, every request, every invitation, every question, every complaint, every crisis that anyone in his life decided to bring to him at any hour on any day. His phone never went to voicemail. His door was always open. He prided himself on this. He called it being available, he called it being a good friend, a reliable colleague, a present father, a supportive partner. He was none of those things. He was exhausted. He was a man who had not had an uninterrupted thought in 4 years. A man who could not sit through a meal without his attention being pulled away by something that someone else had decided was urgent. A man who had become so woven into the needs and demands and schedules and crises of everyone around him that he no longer had any clear sense of where they ended and he began. His name was David, and he came to understand the truth of his situation not through therapy or self-help or a dramatic moment of crisis, but through a single afternoon. His daughter, who was 7 years old, came to find him while he was on his phone in the garden. She stood next to him for a while. He held up one finger without looking at her. She waited. He held up the finger again. She sat down in the grass and waited some more. He finished the call and looked at her and said, "Sorry, sweetheart, what did you need?" She looked at him with the uncomplicated honesty that only children possess and said, "Nothing now, Dad. I just wanted to show you something, but it does not matter anymore." He asked what she had wanted to show him. She pointed at a butterfly that was no longer on the flower where it had been. It was gone. He had missed it. He had been available to everyone, and he had missed it. That afternoon changed something in David. Not immediately, not dramatically, not with a motivational speech or a new system or a productivity hack. With a quiet, growing understanding that being reachable to everyone had made him unreachable to himself. And that everything he actually cared about lived in the territory he had surrendered. The Stoics had a name for what David had lost. They called it the inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius used that phrase to describe the interior space where your values, your clarity, your peace, and your truest self reside. A place that nothing outside you can enter without your permission. But here is the truth that the Stoics were unsparing about. The inner citadel does not maintain itself. You have to protect it. Actively, deliberately, consistently. You have to build habits so quiet and so firm that the world learns where your boundary is. Not by announcement. By practice. There are 8 silent habits that save your inner peace. 8 practices that the Stoics lived and that the modern world has almost entirely forgotten in the noise of constant connection and relentless availability. Each one costs something. Each one gives back more than it costs. Begin. Habit 1. Guard your mornings like your life depends on it. In the winter of 1848, a 39-year-old lawyer in Springfield, Illinois established a rule that his law partners found eccentric and his clients found inconvenient. He would not see anyone or discuss any business matter before 9 in the morning. Not because he was lazy. He was the opposite of lazy. He was at his desk before dawn every single morning, working in uninterrupted silence on whatever required the deepest thinking. Before the partners arrived, before the clients came, before the mail was sorted, before anyone knew he was there, he had already done the work that mattered most. He had protected the hours when his mind was freshest and most capable from the demands that would claim every other hour of his day. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And that quiet morning discipline that looked from the outside like mere preference was actually the engine of some of the most consequential thinking of the 19th century. Lincoln later said that he did his best thinking in the early hours not because he was a morning person by nature, but because the morning was the only time that belonged entirely to him. Every other hour he belonged to someone else. The morning was the hour he could not afford to give away. This is the first and most important silent habit. Guard your mornings. Not from productivity, not to grind more hours out of the day, not to get ahead of the competition. But because the morning is the only time in each day when the world has not yet arrived with its claims. Before the messages, before the calls, before the requests, before the news, before the noise, before the thousand small emergencies that other people will generate between now and nightfall. There is a window. It is small. It closes fast. And what you do inside it determines an enormous amount about what is available to you for the rest of the day. Marcus Aurelius wrote the Meditations in the early morning. Every page, every reflection, every philosophical examination of who he was and who he intended to be. Written before the empire needed him. Because he understood that if he waited until the empire was done with him, there would be nothing left to write with. Seneca made the same practice explicit in his letters to Lucilius. Gather yourself, he wrote, before you are scattered. The scattering begins the moment you become reachable. The gathering happens only in the space before that moment. Do not negotiate with this habit. Do not leave the morning open because someone might need you. Someone will always need you. The morning is not for them. The morning is the one daily practice of self-possession that everything else depends on. Protect it the way Lincoln protected it. Like your actual life depends on it. Because the version of you that has had time to think before the world arrives is a categorically different and more capable version than the one who woke up and immediately began reacting. David the man from the opening began here. He started by not looking at his phone until he had been awake for 1 hour. Just that. 1 hour. By the end of the first week, he had had more original thoughts than he had experienced in the previous 6 months. Habit 2. Let some things go unanswered. There was a painter in 19th century New England named Winslow Homer who was by his early 40s one of the most critically celebrated artists in America. He lived alone on the coast of Maine in a studio he had built himself at Prout's Neck. He had no telephone obviously, and he managed his correspondence with a deliberateness that struck everyone who knew him as eccentric, bordering on rude. He simply did not answer letters he did not feel like answering. Not out of arrogance. Out of a clear philosophical understanding that every response was a conversation, and every conversation was an exchange of attention, and attention was the one thing he could not afford to spend carelessly. His sister-in-law, who occasionally handled his affairs, wrote to him once about a gallery dealer who was anxious to hear from him regarding an exhibition. Homer wrote back to her, "I thank you for your kind interest in my affairs, but as I am perfectly happy, I do not care for any more excitement." He was not being dismissive of the gallery or the opportunity. He was being honest about the economy of his attention. More correspondence, more meetings, more obligations meant less of what had produced everything the gallery wanted to show in the first place. He produced some of the most enduring American paintings of the 19th century in that studio at Prout's Neck. He produced them because he protected his attention ruthlessly from the claims of a world that would gladly have consumed all of it. The modern compulsion to respond to everything immediately is not a personality trait. It is a trained behavior reinforced by technology designed specifically to make the absence of response feel socially dangerous. The little red notification. The unread message count, the seen receipt that tells the sender you received and did not respond. These are engineering decisions made by people who understood that the fear of social disapproval is one of the most powerful motivators available. And they use that fear to colonize your attention. The Stoic response to this is not rudeness. It is clarity. Seneca wrote to Lucilius about the necessity of being selective with both your time and your responses. Avoid those who will depress your spirits and make you doubt yourself, he wrote, and avoid those who seek only to consume your energy without return. He was not talking about enemies. He was talking about the ordinary drain of too many conversations about too little that leaves a person feeling scattered and empty at the end of the day without being able to name exactly why. The silent habit here is this. Not every message requires a response. Not every question requires an answer from you today. Not every person who wants your attention deserves it at the moment they request it. This is not cruelty. It is stewardship. You are the steward of your own attention. And attention poured out carelessly on everything is attention unavailable for anything. Homer understood this. He let the letters sit. He painted. And the paintings outlasted every letter he ever declined to answer. Habit 3. Create space that belongs only to you. In 1845, the philosopher Henry David Thoreau walked into the woods near Walden Pond and built a small cabin. He was not running from the world. He was running towards something the world kept interrupting. He had noticed something about his own life that disturbed him. Every time he had a thought that felt important, something arrived to interrupt it before it could complete itself. A visitor, a conversation, an obligation, a social norm that required his participation. He could not think his best thoughts in the presence of constant social claim. He needed space. Not distance from people he loved. Physical, psychological, temporal space that belonged entirely to him, and that the social world could not enter without explicit invitation. He spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days at Walden. He wrote one of the most influential works in American literature. He came back. But he came back changed. Because he had discovered in that space what the constant presence of social obligation had been costing him. Not his time. His self. The person who knew what he actually thought when the noise stopped. The person who had opinions that had never been formed in reaction to anyone else's. The person who could sit with a question long enough to actually answer it. Most people have never met that person, because they have never created the space for that person to exist. Marcus Aurelius had a phrase for this space. He called it retreating into yourself. You can go into yourself whenever you choose, he wrote, for there is no retreat more peaceful or less troubled than your own soul. But he was careful about what this required. The retreat into yourself is not automatic. It requires the physical and temporal conditions of solitude, actual aloneness, actual silence, actual space that no one else can enter. In the modern world, this requires active construction. You have to build the space. You have to protect it. You have to refuse the social guilt that arrives every time you close a door and do not open it for an hour. Because the social guilt is real and it is constant, and it will tell you that closing the door is selfish, that being unavailable is unkind, that needing space is a character flaw. It is not a character flaw. It is a necessity. The person who never retreats into themselves does not know themselves. And the person who does not know themselves cannot give anything of genuine value to anyone else. They can give compliance, they can give availability, they can give the performance of presence. But not the real thing. Because the real thing lives in the space they never gave themselves. David began carving out 45 minutes on Saturday mornings that belonged only to him. No phone, no family obligations, no email. He sat with his coffee and his notebook, and no agenda. By the third Saturday, he described something he had not experienced in years. The sensation of his own mind settling. Like sediment in disturbed water finally coming to rest. He had been so constantly stirred that he had forgotten what it felt like to be still. That stillness was not nothing. It was the foundation of everything. Habit 4. Choose who has access to your energy. In the court of the Emperor Nero in 1st century Rome, there was a man named Seneca who had spent years navigating one of the most psychologically treacherous environments in human history. He was brilliant and educated and politically connected, and he had used all of those qualities to survive in proximity to a man who was unpredictable, dangerous, and capable of ordering his death on a whim. And in that environment, Seneca developed an insight about human energy that he returned to again and again in his letters. Not everyone deserves access to your interior life, he wrote. Some people take what you give them and use it well. Others take what you give them and are simply hungrier afterward. The second category he called the tub of the crowd, the mass of people whose company leaves you feeling not replenished but emptied. His advice was not to eliminate all social contact. It was to be extraordinarily selective about who received the kind of attention that costs something real. Because there is a difference between the attention you give to a conversation about nothing and the attention you give to someone who matters. And most people are spending most of their highest quality attention on the former. Think about the last week. How many conversations did you have that left you feeling genuinely enriched? How many left you feeling vaguely depleted without being able to say exactly why? The depleting conversations are not always negative. Sometimes they are pleasant. Sometimes they are with people you genuinely like. But they are conversations that take without giving back. That consume attention without producing anything of value in exchange. That leave you at the end of them slightly less yourself than you were at the beginning. The Stoic practice here is not misanthropy. It is discernment. Epictetus taught his students to ask one simple question before entering any sustained social engagement. Will this person make me better, or will they make me less? Not whether they are good people. Not whether they deserve your time in some abstract moral sense. Whether the exchange leaves you more capable or less capable of being who you are trying to be. This is the silent habit of energy management. Not announcing to people that you are no longer available. Not making dramatic declarations about protecting your peace. Simply and quietly. Being less reachable to the people and conversations that cost more than they give. And more present, more open, more genuinely engaged with the ones that do the opposite. Homer did not explain his unanswered letters to the people who sent them. He simply gave his best attention to the work and let the residue of what was left find its way to correspondence. That ordering was the whole of his philosophy. The work first. everything else with whatever remained. Habit 5. Stop explaining yourself. There was a woman in early 20th century America named Georgia who moved to the New Mexico desert and painted. She had been a celebrated figure in New York art circles. She had been married to one of the most influential figures in American photography. She had been at the center of a world that placed enormous value on her opinions, her presence, her social participation. And she left. She moved to an adobe house in Abiquiu, New Mexico, and she painted the desert. And when people asked her why she had left New York, she gave short answers. Because I wanted to. Because it was where I needed to be. Because the light was right. She did not defend the decision, she did not justify it, she did not offer the elaborate explanation that would have satisfied the people who found her choice baffling or disappointing. She just made the choice and lived it. Georgia O'Keeffe became one of the most important visual artists of the 20th century. In the desert, in the silence, in the space she had stopped explaining herself into. The compulsion to explain yourself to everyone who questions your choices is one of the most costly invisible drains on inner peace. And it is almost entirely driven by the need for approval from people who did not ask for that responsibility and cannot actually give you what you are seeking from them. When you explain yourself at length, you are doing several things simultaneously. You are signaling that their opinion of your choice matters more than your confidence in it. You are inviting them into a negotiation you should have closed before it started. You are spending energy defending a decision instead of living it. And you are creating an opening for their doubt to become your doubt. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, and he answered to essentially no one in a formal sense. And still he wrote reminders to himself about this. Not to seek the good opinion of others, he wrote, for that is not in your control. Not to explain yourself into a position you have already earned the right to occupy. The Stoics called this practicing indifference to external judgment. Not indifference to genuine wisdom offered by people who deserve your respect. Indifference to the reflexive questioning of people who are uncomfortable with choices they do not share. There is a simple test. If someone questions a choice you have made, ask yourself one question. Does this person have standing in my life to weigh in on this? Not do they mean well. Not are they intelligent. Do they have standing? Have they earned the right to this conversation through their relationship with you, through their demonstrated wisdom, through their track record of giving you counsel that served your actual best interests? If yes, consider what they say carefully. If no, say thank you for sharing that with me and change nothing. The explanation you owe them is brief. The explanation you owe yourself is honest and complete. But you do not owe the honest and complete version to everyone who asks. Georgia O'Keeffe knew this. She kept the desert. She kept the light. She kept the work. She gave the short answer and went back inside. Habit 6. Be slow to react and slow to engage. In 1905, a young man named Albert was working as a patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland. He was not famous. He was not yet a professor or a published theorist, or a figure of any consequence in the scientific establishment. He was a 26-year-old clerk examining other people's inventions for 8 hours a day. And in the remaining hours he was thinking. Not talking about thinking. Not explaining his thinking to colleagues who could not yet follow it. Not performing the appearance of intellectual work for an audience. Just thinking. Privately, slowly, without urgency. He let his ideas develop at the pace they required. He did not rush to publish before the ideas were ready because he needed the scientific community's validation. He did not share his developing theories in the seminars and discussions of the Bern Scientific Circle because the ideas needed to exist in his own mind first before they could survive contact with other minds. He protected the development of his thinking from the social pressure that turns tentative insight into defended position before the insight is ready to bear that weight. In 1905, Albert Einstein published 4 papers that changed physics forever. The theory of special relativity, the photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, the mass-energy equivalence. 4 papers in 1 year from a man who had spent years in apparently unremarkable silence. The silence was not unremarkable. The silence was the work. This is the silent habit of slow reaction. Not the performance of calm, not the pretense of not caring. The genuine philosophical practice of allowing things to develop inside you before they are exposed to the friction of the external world. Most people bring their half-formed thoughts to other people too soon. They share ideas before the ideas are strong enough to survive sharing. They ask for opinions before they have formed their own. They react to situations before they have understood them. And the result is that their thinking is permanently shaped by other people's responses rather than by their own developing clarity. Epictetus had a practice he described as the pause. Between stimulus and response, he said, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom and your growth. He was not talking about a pause of minutes. Sometimes he was talking about a pause of days. The practice of not reacting immediately to things that seem to require immediate reaction. Of letting the first wave of feeling pass before deciding whether to engage. Of asking, is this actually my business, and does my engagement here actually improve anything, or does it just burn energy that belongs to something else? Marcus Aurelius applied this to every dimension of his life. He described being slow to speak, slow to commit, slow to judge, slow to condemn. Not because he was indecisive. Because he understood that the world loses nothing when you take your time. And you lose something irreplaceable every time you react before you are ready. Einstein in that burn patent office was practicing this at the highest possible level. Letting the ideas be what they needed to be in the space where no one could reach them. Before they were ready to be shared. Before they were ready to become what they became. Habit 7. Detach from outcomes you cannot control. In the summer of 1519, a young Portuguese explorer named Ferdinand set sail from Spain with 5 ships and 270 men. His goal was to find a western route to the Spice Islands. He did not know how long it would take. He did not know whether it was possible. He did not know whether he would survive. He only knew which direction to sail and that he was going to sail in that direction until the voyage was either complete or it ended him. Ferdinand Magellan sailed for 3 years. He lost 4 of his 5 ships. He lost 232 of his 270 men. He was killed in a battle in the Philippines and never completed the voyage himself. The one remaining ship, the Victoria, with 18 survivors, completed the first circumnavigation of the Earth and returned to Spain with enough spice in its hold to pay for the entire expedition and turn a profit. Magellan did not complete the voyage. The voyage was completed. The distinction matters. Because Magellan's piece, the thing that allowed him to keep sailing after losing 4 ships and 232 men, was not certainty about the outcome. It was complete commitment to the direction and complete release of what he could not control. He could not control the storms. He could not control the disease. He could not control the mutinies. He could not control the battle that killed him. He could control where he pointed the ship. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire. Wanting only what is within your power to actually have. Directing your full energy at the quality of your effort, and releasing completely your attachment to outcomes that other forces beyond you will ultimately determine. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in a passage that has become one of the most quoted in the Meditations. Confine yourself to the present. Do not add to your difficulties by pulling in the anxiety of future outcomes that have not yet arrived. Be entirely present in the quality of what you are doing right now. And let what follows follow. This habit is perhaps the most difficult of all the silent habits because the modern world is structured entirely around outcome metrics. How many, how fast, how much, how successful, how viral, how recognized. The question is always about the result, never about the quality of the direction. And people who organize their peace around results have no peace because results are not in their control. The Victoria came home. Magellan did not. Both were part of the same voyage. And the voyage was worth making. David came to understand this slowly over the months after his butterfly moment with his daughter. He began to practice releasing his grip on how his days were received by other people. Whether they appreciated his availability, whether they noticed his effort, whether they gave him credit for what he was building. He focused on the direction. Am I pointed at what matters to me? Am I spending today in a way that the person I want to be would recognize? That question replaced the question of whether anyone was approving of the answer. And the replacement changed everything. Habit 8. Make inner peace a practice, not a destination. There was an old Zen teacher named Shunryu Suzuki who came from Japan to San Francisco in 1959 and spent the rest of his life teaching meditation to American students. He is best remembered for one sentence from his book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few. But what fewer people know is the way he described his own practice in his final years when he was very sick and very near death. A student asked him whether after all his decades of practice he had achieved enlightenment. He laughed and said, "I am a very poor Zen student. I am still working on it every day." Not because he had failed. Because he understood something that his students needed to hear. Inner peace is not a destination you arrive at and then occupy permanently. It is a practice. A daily returning. A daily choosing of the habits that protect the space where peace lives. And the choosing never stops being necessary. Even for the master. Even for the teacher. Even for the person who has been at it for 50 years. Because the world does not stop generating noise just because you have gotten better at protecting yourself from it. The demands keep coming. The people who want your attention keep wanting it. The notifications keep arriving. The crises keep presenting themselves with the urgency they always claim to possess. And every single day you choose again. Do I give this my attention or do I protect what is behind it? The Stoics did not promise that this practice became easy. They promised that it became more natural. Marcus Aurelius was at this practice every morning for 20 years. He wrote the same reminders to himself in year 19 that he had written in year 1. Not because he had not progressed. Because he understood that progress in this practice is not the elimination of the daily effort. It is the deepening of the daily willingness. The willingness to keep choosing the morning before the phone. The willingness to let some things go unanswered. The willingness to create and protect the space that belongs only to you. The willingness to guard who has access to what you most deeply are. The willingness to stop explaining yourself to people who do not have standing. The willingness to be slow and deliberate where the world wants you reactive and immediate. The willingness to release the outcomes you cannot control and find your peace entirely in the quality of your direction. The willingness to do all of this not once, not for 31 days, not until the motivation runs out. Every day. As a practice. As the ongoing project of being a person who has not surrendered their interior life to the noise. Shunryu Suzuki died in 1971. His students described his final days as extraordinarily peaceful. Not because peace had been achieved and locked in. Because he had been practicing it every day for decades. And the practice was so deeply embedded in who he was that even dying could not interrupt it. That is what the silent habits build. Not a state. A person. The kind of person whose inner peace is not contingent on external conditions. Not on whether people respond the way you hoped. Not on whether the day goes the way you planned. Not on whether you are appreciated, recognized, approved, or understood. The kind of person who has built something inside themselves that the world cannot reach. That is the inner citadel Marcus Aurelius wrote about. Not a metaphor. An actual constructed thing. Built one silent habit at a time. Over weeks and months and years of daily practice. David did not become a monk. He did not move to the desert or disconnect from the world or leave his phone in a drawer forever. He remains reachable. But on his terms. He guards his mornings, he lets some things go unanswered, he has a space that belongs only to him, he has become quieter about who receives his deepest attention, he has stopped explaining choices he does not owe explanations for, he has learned to pause before reacting, he has released his grip on outcomes, he wakes up every morning and chooses the practice again. And one morning last spring his daughter found him sitting in the garden without his phone. She sat next to him. They watched a butterfly together for a long time without saying anything. He did not miss it. He has not forgotten that he almost did. That is the whole of what is being offered here. Not a system. Not a schedule. Not a 30-day challenge. A philosophy. A set of daily choices about what deserves your attention and what does not. About what belongs to the world and what belongs entirely to you. About who you are when you stop performing availability and start practicing presence. The world will not stop asking. It never stops asking. The question is whether you have built something inside yourself strong enough to determine how you answer. The Stoics built it. Marcus Aurelius built it in the chaos of empire. Seneca built it in the proximity of danger. Epictetus built it in the absolute conditions of slavery. They did not wait for the world to become quieter. They became quieter inside the noise. That is available to you. Not someday. In the morning before your phone reaches you. In the pause before you respond. In the door you close and do not open for one uninterrupted hour. In the butterfly you stay present long enough to actually see. Begin there. Everything else follows. Please subscribe for more.